Alright, what's up guys? Getting straight into the point today, because I wasn't ever originally going to really cover or involve myself with the whole Cinebear / Just a Robot / Kumo drama and or the grooming situation surrounding Cinebear, because other channels with more knowledge of that side of the situation have already covered it in much greater detail than I ever could. But considering the most recent development of outright copyright abuse on top of the person behind said abuse being none other than Kumo himself, as well as considering my stance on the entire matter, well, I definitely had to chime in a bit on the entire thing at that point, and at least help spread awareness of this. So to start with, this all gained my attention through Twitter a couple days ago as of making this video, when an account by the name of Cope and Seethe already shared 2 tweets about this situation at the time. So I'll just be covering what I know and can gather from these screenshots first, before touching on the other stuff that I have. So the first of these tweets was Cope and Seethe quote tweeting someone else's tweet. The original tweet in question was by a channel named Flatly, sharing a screenshot of the YouTube copyright takedown. And I will be showing all of these as I go, if not reading some of them off as well. But essentially, Flatly must have made a video that also covered or even focused on Kumo's involvement with the Cinebear situation. But considering the DMCA strike, I can't just go and look at the video to see its contents anymore, and never knew about it or their channel before all this. So, this account named Cope and Seethe quote tweeted Flatly afterwards, claiming they had no outright confirmation that Kumo was the one behind their copyright strike. The most they had at the time, from what he shared on Twitter, was a Discord screenshot claiming that Kumo had filed this false strike a few days ago. But I mean, come on, we all know what the internet and especially what Discord is like, so I don't blame them for waiting to find more evidence that outright proved Kumo's involvement. Which a few hours later, Cope and Seethe tweeted out again, inevitably tying in Kumo's involvement to the copyright strike, with Kumo even going on later to proudly admitting to being the one behind the faulty DMCA abuse. And trust me, I'll be getting into much more of that shortly. But in Cope and Seethe's second tweet, he says he attempted to reach out and have Kumo remove the strike from Flatly, paraphrasing Kumo's words whilst also sharing some screenshots, which I'll read off in a moment. But apparently all of this was over quote-unquote artwork according to Kumo, meaning this was all pathetically fucking petty, and that he struck Flatly's channel over a goddamn thumbnail. And Kumo supposedly justifies himself by claiming that quote, no one cared when he was in the same situation. So, in other words, and in layman's terms, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em. Which I just briefly have to comment, this whole situation was the first I was hearing about Kumo allegedly getting a false strike prior to him striking Flatly, and despite how fucking much I despise Kumo, I would never in any way justify him receiving the same treatment. Using his own experience with a false strike as an excuse to do the same to others is just infuriating to me. It shows us all Kumo's true colors. He's incredibly petty, completely immature, and this especially shows just how unhinged he's always been. So I think now would be as good a time as any to remind everyone that during our drama with Kumo a while back, he was considering, and probably did try to, report Nier's video on him, despite the fact he was the one to make an unprompted video on Nier and subsequently mention the stupid VC we had with him first, meaning he was the one to originally bring up our dumb situation stemming from a Discord call onto YouTube. But the second he got backlash from us for it, he wanted to report Nier's video. And with all this new information in hindsight, I wouldn't be surprised if he wanted to copyright strike Nier back then either. But that's all long in the past and besides the point, so I think I should move on to reading these Discord DMs between Kumo and the other third party. Hey, is this legit? He has time. I did that a while ago, lol. You're striking at randoms. If you only care about these things when they happen to you, you don't care about them. Flatly never struck you. Nope, Malem struck me, and I had no grounds to fucking dispute it. I don't care about them because nobody fucking cared about it when it happened to me. I don't get what there is to argue about here. Where was this outrage when the exact same thing happened to me, where I was given 2 strikes that I couldn't dispute? It's about having some basic principles regardless of what others are doing. I've said this the whole year that using bad tactics is a bullshit weak move. If you don't care about these things once the tide turns, then you're going to find yourself very alone. Take the strike down, unprivate, and apologize. This is a huge thing to fuck up. Nah, I think I'll dig my heels in on this one. I'm not gonna apologize for their own double standards. There's only an outrage when it's someone they already don't like. If someone they don't like has done it to them, they're oddly fucking quiet. These principles mean fuck all to any of them, so why should they to me? So like I was saying before, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em, am I right? Because for one, I never personally heard of or knew about the situation where Kumo faced a false copyright strike, let alone two. But you would think with him already having dealt with one himself, that he'd know how terrible and bullshit it is to do to another creator. But instead, he uses his experience and twists the logic to justify his own abuse of the copyright system. I mean, it's just beyond deluded and fucked up. Had I have known about his experience beforehand, I may have actually stuck up for him, but if he's going to use that to justify his own abuse and quote, dig his heels in, as he says, then I am going to absolutely lambast him harshly for such a stupid fucking decision. Of course, I still don't justify his own abuse, but again, having only just heard about it because of these DMs and knowing nothing about it, I don't really have much to say about it other than I don't condone him receiving false copyright strikes either. Because it doesn't matter to me how much I like or dislike someone when receiving or dishing out copyright abuse. I answered someone on this very topic during one of Nier's last streams when asked about my own principles on the matter, to which I said something along the lines of, even if one of my longtime favorite YouTubers like Markiplier hypothetically gave someone a false strike, I'd definitely be criticizing him for it. Because copyright abuse is copyright abuse. Now obviously, I don't believe someone like Mark would ever do such a thing.
I am a man who owns 5 ovens!
But he is ultimately someone I'd be biased towards, so that's why I mentioned him as a hypothetical example. So Kumo acting as though everyone else has no principles on the matter because, quote, where were they for me, while ultimately being the next person to abandon their own principles and quote unquote dig in their heels on legitimate abuse, is the ultimate fucking irony to me. If anyone here lacks integrity or consistency on the matter, I would think it'd be the guy who thinks he's somehow justified in his own abuse of the system. But it's here I'd like to move on to the rest of the screenshots I have regarding this situation. Everything I've covered thus far I had a little more context surrounding it, but the rest of the details and evidence I'll be discussing was all provided to me by Ace Howler. Quick shout out to him for giving me what he could, by the way, as well as anything I may have found and saved on Twitter after the fact. So first off, Kumo did tweet out some stuff himself regarding the copyright strike, which I sadly couldn't see myself due to him setting his account to private during the Cinnambear/Jar grooming drama. So again, thank you Ace for providing what you could, the first of which is Kumo pretty much just repeating more of the same sentiment that I previously discussed. The same was done to me twice at the beginning of this month. This outrage was nowhere to be found. Feel free to screen cap for people who aren't following me. This standard means nothing to any of you because you apply it whenever it's convenient for you. Suck my dick from the back. Wait, from the back? How do we even start? What? Anyways, so he's doubling and tripling down on his stance, attempting to justify his actions because, quote, the same was done to me and no one did anything. As if this actually means anything. I seriously cannot fathom how he believes everyone else has their principles fucked up or twisted when he so willfully did a 180 with his and justifies copyright abuse only because he's experienced it. I'd say try not being such an insufferable douche and people would be more willing to stick up for you, but that ship has long since sailed. And like I already stated, had I have known about him receiving a false strike, I'd at least made a community post or something criticizing the person who did it to you first. I mean, it boggles my mind that Kumo can lambast everyone else for twisting their principles when he's using a situation where he was falsely struck and twisting it to say no one else has principles when criticizing his own copyright abuse. Well, I guess no one should show him Chris the Narc's tweet where he's outright criticizing both Kumo and the person that struck him previously, calling him out for this alleged double standard that he believes everyone else to have somehow. Because let's get this very clear one last time. Kumo is the only one here with twisted principles. Now, the next tweet isn't really all that consequential. I'll have it up for y'all to read, but it's just Kumo coping over the criticism he's received over the false strike as somehow being worthless. But the next one is Kumo interacting with the very person he falsely struck, flatly, acting as pretentious and coy as ever. Now, I ain't gonna lie to y'all, his coy pretentiousness is as infuriating to me now as it was when we first interacted with Kumo, and I swear that he just needs a fucking 24/7 handler or something to keep his schizo ass off the internet, because if he's devolving to false copyright striking people over fucking thumbnail art, well then he's actually transcended from infuriatingly annoying to an actual menace and problem on the platform. But I digress. The very last thing I'd like to discuss is how the person who apparently struck Kumo in the past before this whole situation, Mlemrino? I don't know how to pronounce it, but Mlem and Kumo Kumo, supposedly dealt with and resolved the strike against Kumo's channel peacefully. So it really is the ripest cherry on top of all this drama when he tries using the copyright abuse against him as an excuse or justification for doubling down on him striking flatly, when 1. Malem striking him had nothing to do with any of that, and 2. That it was not only resolved peacefully, but was dealt with well before he decided to falsely strike flatly. Hey, I just wanted to say that I don't think I really care as much to have my art taken down by Kumo as much as I do having it at least credited now. Obviously, I would prefer if he take it down, but I don't feel like that's what's going to happen unless I strike his live, which I tried, but YouTube is kinda weird and I personally don't feel like dealing with it anymore. Edit, I believe that Kumo and I are on somewhat decent terms now, he has credited me and all is well. Another edit, Kumo's video got taken down, I tried to stop the strike from going through, but YouTube is stupid. If Kumo wants it back up, I'm willing to work with him to get it reinstated. Now, I'd really like to believe that all this evidence speaks mostly for itself. I think I've definitely repeated myself enough in this video about Kumo and his terrible justifications and excuses for his behavior, especially when these excuses don't even add up and his own situation was resolved well before he ever struck flatly to begin with. So, I'd just like to end things off here by saying I obviously don't condone Kumo receiving any false copyright strike, but it will never excuse or justify him falsely striking another channel. Nor does his pathetic attempts at justifying all this by claiming that everyone else has twisted principles by not defending him. He of all people, after dealing with a false strike himself, should have known better not to abuse the system and harm another creator's channel. That, in my eyes, shows how his principles mean fuck all. And with all that being said, I'm gonna be ending the video off here, y'all. I mean, it really was some poetic justice to see Kumo finally get his comeuppance for this after all this time, and I really do think it was a long time coming and well deserved. So, big ups for watching the video as always, and you know, don't forget to subscribe for some more quality therapy, and I'll catch y'all in the next video.